Welcome to EcoDharma Explorations. All right, I'm going to hand this over to Carol Cano to get us started.
Greetings, everyone. Hello, dear ones. Thank you for being here today. My name is Carol Cano. I'm the founder and executive director of Braided Wisdom. Braided Wisdom is a cross-cultural mindfulness nonprofit organization that weaves together indigenous wisdom, Buddha Dharma, earth-based traditions. The centerpiece of our work is healing justice, as we envision a humanity that thrives in mutual respect, deep connection to the earth through collectively cultivating joy and healing, belonging, freedom for all beings. We are deeply grateful for this partnership with Kristen Barker and One Earth Sangha and Spirit Rock Meditation Center to provide these teachings. Together, we are widening and deepening the circle of shared caretakers, carrying forward practices and wisdom traditions that reminds us we belong to the earth and we're not separate from it. We are living in a time of polycrisis, ecological decline, climate devastation, deep social division, and the rise of fascism, conditions that call for grounding, connection, and collective responsibility. As we observe Native American Heritage Month, we take a moment to honor those who are missing, unsolved, unheard, and to acknowledge the ongoing impact on Indigenous families and communities. Indigenous women and girls continue to face the highest rate of violence and trafficking in the US, yet this crisis remains largely overlooked. We speak this today to bring visibility, accountability, and the collective actions needed to protect and uplift most impacted. At Braided Wisdom, we believe this is the work of our time, to remember, to reconnect, and to act together in service of life for all beings seen and unseen. We are grateful to be in community with you today as part of this shared effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. And welcome everyone to EcoDharma Explorations and today's special session, introducing the House of Yin, a sanctuary for spiritual and queer liberation, with our beloved guest speaker, Sonali, Sangeeta, Balajee. My name is Danny Jung, pronounced she, her, and I'm calling in from the unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, and I will be your moderator today. Much gratitude as well to our team member, Monique Calfé, as well, who is the caring virtual steward behind the scenes as well. And now I'd like to finally introduce our guest speaker for today's EcoDharma exploration, Sonali Sangeeta Balajee. Sonali is a proud mother, artist, organizer, facilitator, mindfulness and yoga instructor, and emerging health practitioner who works at the intersection of spiritual wisdoms, queerness, and ecological knowledge. She is the founder and co-director of Spiritual Social Medicinal Apothecary and founder of Our Bodhi Project, spiritual and political projects that elevate the medicines of our times, focusing particularly on the medicines of spiritual practice, sacred inquiry, queerness, and ecological wisdoms. Sonali's life work has focused on strategies elevating wholeness, specifically calling for leading with multiple truths and perspectives required for collective health. She has spent 13 years in U.S. local government, creating and leading social justice and racial equity initiatives. Her community organizing background has focused on youth development, environmental justice, racial justice, and HIV/AIDS-related advocacy and service. And her advocacy currently focuses on resource mobilization for projects and initiatives that speak to the spiritual, political antidotes our world so desperately needs. And I like to introduce a fun fact about any of our guest speakers. I was really delighted to find out that Sonali is a very skillful orchestrator of very detailed and very fun pranks on the people that she loves most, often requiring travel, props, and more. Wow, how fun. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming community organizer, justice advocate, trailblazing leader, and yin extraordinaire, Sonali Sangeeta Balajee. Welcome, Sonali.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Carol, Monique, Kristen, everyone here at EcoDharma and Braided Wisdom. It is such an honor to be here, and I'm coming in from the lands of the Multnomah, Klickitat, Siletz, Cowlitz, and so many other tribes. The settled name is Portland, Oregon, and would love to first ground us in a little bit of a connection through meditation. So find a comfortable seat. This will take maybe about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll move into our flow of time. So first in this space, just simply focus on your breath. Yeah. The thoughts of feeling harried, curious, joyful, tired, sad, they're all welcome. The feelings and thoughts are all welcome. The only invitation is to notice the inhale and how the inhale just turns into that exhale, just as part of an innate, dynamic loop. So just take a few deep breaths here, maybe 4 or 5. Noticing the quality of the inhale as it brings energy in, and then the exhale as it releases and cools carbon dioxide all the way out. And in this space, would love to invite us to offer our attention to a body of water that is near us, close to us. Maybe it's a place where we've sought refuge, a place that takes our breath away. And just notice this body of water. Notice the qualities of it. What color the water is in your holding of it in this time. And notice it in its fullness. So what would it be like to say that lake or river or pond includes its borders, its floodplains? Expand a bit of your attention to hold the whole of water and wetness. And just notice what it feels like to be with that beautiful body of water and its interconnectedness. And as we're being with this beautiful body of water, for me, it's a river. Let's play with seeing its fullness in another way. What's below the surface water? Allow your attention to travel, to track, to trace the groundwater below it, the riverbed, the lake bed. And be with the wholeness of that body of water with all of its layers, all of its shapes, all of its flows. Just offer gratitude for water as life force, water as a great teacher and an essential element in our lives, as uniter, as deep source of refuge. And if you feel comfortable, I invite you to just say, this water body is the earth. The earth is. And fill in the blank with your water body's name, or if it doesn't have a name, that's fine too. This lake or river or water body is the earth, and the earth is this beautiful, nourishing water. And then just take a deep breath as we move our attention to our own bodies. This body, most of which is water. And just hold yourself in your heart gaze with whatever emotions are present, whatever thoughts. Notice where you may ache or feel a little constrained. You may find your body moving in response to this inquiry. Totally fine. Notice where you feel openings. Could be a softness. And then, just like the water body, take a moment to view from your heart what's around you. So it may be the material around you, it may be relations that are in the space with you. What are your floodplains? What are your spaces that interconnect with you, your body right now? It could be the chair underneath you to start. And begin to expand your attention to the beings who support you, with whom you find joy or ease. And just hold them in your vision. It's you and your body and the others in a beautiful web. And just hold that lightly. And then offer gratitude for this vesicle that we are in this life, that is a bit of refuge for us. A space that we are in trying to navigate all the complexities. An apothecary of sorts, for the original meaning of apothecary is the healer, the healing practitioner themselves. So just offer gratitude for yourself. You may be drawn to place hands over the heart. And a simple invitation, if you feel drawn, to say quietly to yourself, I am the earth. The earth is who I am. I am the earth. The earth is who I am. And one last sweet invitation is to call into your attention again that water body, as if it's right next to you. Maybe you're on the shores, maybe you're in the water. And just inviting a sense of real togetherness, that we are the earth. The earth is who we are. I give gratitude to all of your relations and your supports who are moving with you all the time. And specifically in this session, I give gratitude to all the bodies of water that have been called into our collective experience of today. And you can wiggle fingers and toes and slowly come back into whatever space you'd like to restfully experience the next bit of time. And in this body, whatever space we're in, whatever our abilities, our forms today, the invitation is to really hold yourself as an apothecary, to hold yourself as refugia, which is found in our, in our world, these pockets of life that occur in the middle of disturbance, these pockets of life force that sit with what it means to thrive. What do we need to let go? So the only invitation is to experience what you witness and see what resonates and let go of the rest. Yeah. So in the next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to move into some context setting first, a bit on the social, political. Dear Carol already set us up for that flow. I'm going to spoken word that a little bit, constellate a little bit on my own personal context too, and how I came into these questions that helped move my dear co-lead Sam and I into bringing into form this apothecary at the spiritual social level, and specifically this House of Yin. And there will be moments of reflection to break up the talk as well and to bring in some embodiment. So just in terms of the context, there's so many words for this. Our beloved Joanna Macy, who just passed, called it the Great Turning. It's showing up in so many of our different deep mystical wisdom traditions as something that I'm feeling as the great rebalancing that's happening. So there's a collapse of the institutions and thought and culture and cognitive patterns in ourselves, but also in our worlds and our collectives and our families, as a result of something that has been inspired by a spirit of domination that is not sustainable and not aligned with the laws of nature. And I feel, by the way, very honored to come along on this line of incredible speakers in this series. So I'll also be braiding what dear Kyra offered and some of what Dr. Gray offered and our beloved Khanda as well, who all spoke to this in their offerings too. At the same time that we're seeing this collapse in a variety of ways, so much violence and separation, we're also seeing a lot of life force coming up as antidotal to what's happening. And it is fascinating. I'm just going to do a little bit of some names, some efforts that you might know that came up for me this morning when I was thinking about this. So these are voices who are and efforts counterbalancing the hyperheatedness, the hyper separation. So Adrienne Marie Brown and her sister, I was just introduced to this beautiful podcast on how to survive the end of the world. Relational Uprisings, Braided Wisdom, EcoDharma, Othering and Belonging Institute, Taproot, Rooting in the Sacred, Land Justice Futures. If you don't know them, find them. They're incredible. Kazuhaga, Fierce Vulnerability, his recent book that's out. Francis Weller. So many poets that are not out there in the media world per se, but who are holding and stitching the fibers of our souls in this moment. And so many unnamed, and that's such a power of the yin too, is that it doesn't have to be overt, but I just wanted to sort of lay out a tapestry. The other current events happening that are really grounded in this root of separation from the earth include what's ongoingly happening and historically happening to with our Indigenous peoples around erasure, invisibility, not just on these lands, but worldwide. Ongoing war, genocidal acts, what's happening right now in Palestine, and paying specific attention to Palestine, Sudan, and other areas of incredible war. Real-time violences here against our immigrants and immigrant families. And then this crazy, structural and systemic desire to erase and negatively impact our queer and trans communities. All of that is happening. The thing that I'm feeling, though, if I had a big whiteboard and if we were all together, is that all of these exist at the same time and they're in deep relation with each other. One of the key things I wanted to bring here is that we are in that great turning, in the great rebalancing. We don't know how it'll move and shift. We don't know the outcome. What we do see, though, is a yin revolution happening. So the emphasis on community, relationship, connection, stitching and sewing the pathways together, cooling down, resting, seeking refuge, tracking and tracing in a way that honors our unity. So we are in this incredible, quiet, often community-driven in our families, our locales, risings. Uprisings, yes, but the motion of the yin, which I'll get into, is downrising. Is that a thing? That's pretty queer. We'll get to that too. Community organizing, and so much happening right now. And I'm so moved, and Carol is a new friend, and so's Danny and the group, but I'm so moved by our BIPOC queer communities and leadership who are really just elegantly showing up again in another cycle of sort of restoration and rejuvenation. And then context-wise, we are squarely in the Northern Hemisphere in the fall and winter. So Monique had talked about embracing the fall. That is a wind behind our back, right? It is really something to literally fall into, something that can give us resource and source. And it's a time to gather our energies and bring them in. So with the modern world, the modern project clearly needs realignment to the laws of nature. This is just true. So many are talking about this. How do we move with the earth-based wisdoms Carol had mentioned? Today is really elevating the Tao And in my, it's been about 20 years of embodied study, and more recently, a bit more on the scholarly, and specifically the magic and the wisdom of the yin right now. And where does queering and queerness factor into that? They're actually intimately, deeply connected and inseparable. So we'll talk about that today as well. And again, the yin revolution is coming up quite a bit. And I was just mentioning some of those efforts. So before getting into a bit about the yin and some really sweet visuals, I wanted to just take a moment to locate myself in the inquiry and just share a little bit about my upbringing, especially, and how that has formed the shape of this. So there are maybe 3 or 4 parts to my stream as an infant Sonali till about 18 or so. One is being born to immigrants from India and Sri Lanka whom they were alive during independence. So this deep structural break from colonization, and had such hopes, such an imagination for this new world. First in their families to come. This may be a similar story to many of you. They came with a lot of hope, a lot of fear, and a lot of pain and suffering. So many gifts, one of which was bringing to me these incredible wisdoms of ancient Hinduism, Buddhism, interestingly, closet Methodist experiences. That's for like a whole other session. But these were moving with me and through me as a little one. And I found a lot of solace there in a house that experienced a lot of trouble as well, in addition to gifts. Another part of my stream was I was born fairly chronically ill and had to navigate the world of what it means to be in this body as a young, child of color in the Midwest, and found myself in doctor's offices quite a bit and was noticing there the partial gaze that they had on my health and on the treatment. And it was often very cold. And I used to wonder, how come they don't talk about the power of turmeric or coriander seed, things that I was raised with? I was just confused, as a younger Sonali. And I was really seeking within myself. I didn't have this language, but more of like, how do I strengthen my force, my life force? Actually, no, because I saw Star Wars and that was a big deal. So the whole May the Force be with you was real for me. It was very tangible. I'm like, yes, I can be a Jedi kind of thing. So that inflammation that I was feeling, I was very young. I think in my teens, I looked around and I could see the signatures of inflammation in my parents as well, and their parents, linking to Rupa Maria's work on Inflamed, which is so pivotal. And my daughter as well moves with chronic health, and we both learned that in order to survive and to decrease inflammation, we need to disentangle from the hyperproductivity, the hyperheatedness, and have found gifts in our spiritual practices around that, around falling into the fact that the river is connected to its floodplains. Those are the same thing. That the water that evaporates and becomes cloud and then precipitation, that is all the same thing, building off Da Cunha's work that my dear co-lead Sam has introduced me to. So that was another stream. And in my own broken body, I'm looking at my parents and seeing the gifts that they have and the brokenness in our family as well, and how they were trying to hold the whole. It's like, okay, there are some things that are coming up here thematically that I'm noticing as now a 17 or 18-year-old. Another part of the stream that I just want to mention, which has a lot of relevance to this, is I was trained as an artist at a very young age, at age 3. And in that space, my broken body found joy, even though it was painful to move at a certain point. That life force really, really flowed and started to heal what was going on. And it was a place of expansion, and I could really find a lot of myself in that. At about 16, I noticed that the way that I loved romantically and emotionally was not even radically different. I'll go ahead and say 100% different than what was in my immigrant family. And those hues of attraction were so bright, but privately held and quietly held. And yet I moved with that quite a bit. It was fuel and also just a fiery element and a watery element that really supported me. So I was always interested in that. And I think the key noticings from this part of the story for me that will come into play here, I noticed the gifts in my spiritual traditions and the patriarchy that ran through them as well. I noticed that the closer I got to finding solace in Lake Michigan was where I grew up, and many rivers, that unity helped me understand and hold the patriarchy with compassion. The liberatory life force experience I had in the arts and performance specifically for about 18 years was so powerful, and at times it felt ungrounded. I was longing for something a bit more sacredly held in that, and the only place I found it were a few Indian dance experiences. And noticing the partial gaze of the Western doctor, who was often white, offering me advice for those many years of acute illness. So I developed pretty quickly an ability to refuse, to say, this is not what I want to be a part of. This is what I want to be a part of. So discernment. And those inquiries led me to this place of sitting with what are the medicines of our times. And this is so aligned with Braided Wisdoms. I'm so excited about ongoing connection, right? What are the medicines of our times and in the ancient wisdoms, and also brought through the modern project, brought through into the contemporary? A deep quest for wholeness and unity, and within that, an understanding that that which is uniquely ours needs to be expressed and have the freedom to be expressed. And so what does that look like? What does that look and feel like? And as a wisdom tender, a designated receiver of sorts, how can I be in my own body, first and foremost, holding the holes, holding my floodplains, holding my precipitation, holding the shadows? What does that feel like? What could that be? And so right now for you all, as we go through this, again, just being with, let's take a moment just to maybe do a little scan of your own life and notice where you have felt life force in your own life, like strong. Maybe noticing some things that have diminished that. And we'll just take half a minute here just to pause so we can participate together. So with that, I can feel the Tao and the yin yang knocking a bit. So I'll move us into how I, through the personal story of how I encountered the yin and the yang, and something new that I came to in prep for this talk. At 16, I had the good fortune to go to China. I was on an exchange program where we were studying the sciences. We got to choose whatever science we wanted. And I was so drawn to marine biology, and very specifically the health of the oceans. And I was very drawn to whales and turtles, still am. And we visited 6 or 7 cities that summer as part of this exchange program. And it was 1988. This is a very important thing because there was a quiet yin-like bit of unrest that was happening in the country at the time, led by young people, intellectuals, carers. It was so profound. I found it very interesting that in the midst of going to these aquariums and also doing the study and getting to know my Chinese counterparts, and actually bribing some restaurants and bars to play our music, like the Police and New Order. And I mean, whatever, it was 1988. It was lovely. In the midst of that, my American friends from the States said, are you noticing something with your exchange student? And I was that students, there were two that I was really close with. When the teacher leaders were away, we were being asked questions about our Constitution in the corners of these aquariums, about the Declaration, about what democracy felt like. And I'm like, what is happening? We didn't really put all of this together. And so at the same time, they were exposing me to the yin yang. And I began to outwardly express that by wearing a lot of jewelry that had the yin yang. It was very popular during the 80s. For me, it was very tender and very personal and political. And we all left that August before senior year, and fast forward to April of 89, and a former communist leader had died at that time. And it sparked deep unrest. By May, there was a huge military response in Tiananmen Square, which is where we were hanging out, just not even a year prior. And we started losing touch with our student friends. At that point, many of us just never heard from them again. And we don't know who has passed or who has gone into hiding, where they are now. I think about them often. And the big thing is that it was huge to see the riots and the protests on air in whatever way we could get it on our news, because we were seeing the sacred through the social happening. We were seeing the spiritual through the political. And Dr. Leslie Gray had said something that has really moved us in Soma too, that the Haudenosaunee have said that you must have a spiritual center to your democracy. And I was so struck by the comment that she had said that to them, to us, capitalism and socialism are the same, and that they do not have a spiritual center. And so I'm just going back to where the yin yang came into my life, how it has traveled with me this whole time. And I wanted to bring in, actually, very, very quickly, one image that struck me here of an intersection of liberatory action and art. This is taken on May 30th of 1989. This is the goddess of democracy. I don't know how many of you know of this incredible sculpture, but it came about through 15 to 20 art students who have kept their anonymity, and I don't know if any of them have passed during this time. And it was a collaboration of saying, look, we need to embody the sacred feminine, the goddess of what we want, and put it in the middle of the square. It was demolished. It was taken apart and lit on fire on June 4th. And with that, I bring this here as, an inspiration around keeping our life force alive in the face of fascism is really the thing. And that just another example of how this has been around for a while. And this is just, from the 80s on. I recently saw Alok, our dear queer trans, super inspirational being, spirit. And Alok had said that community threatens authoritarianism. And I just wanted to bring that here as well. And community and communing and relating is such a part of the yin. Let's come back to our inhale and exhale again, just taking note of the rhythm of the inhale and the exhale as you're looking at the screen or as you're looking past the screen. The inhale is more of bringing in the energy again, and the exhale is more of the release. The inhale can activate that sympathetic system a bit. The exhale is the parasympathetic. And when we think about the yin yang, it is the same. They're two energies moving together, always in profound, they're complementary and opposites. They're within each other. So in the yang is the yin, in the yin is the yang. And This is grounded in the ancient wisdoms of the Tao and Taoism. What I want to just sort of ease our way into, how I want to ease our way into this is just to call back the river, for instance, and notice that know that the river or the water body goes through different spaces and places and states according to season. So in the hot, which is more the white half here, the heat, the yang, it will have a different consistency, different shapes and forms. In the cool, in the winter, it may be heavier, colder, slower. In the spring, it can start to get more bubbly and sort of gurgling because of ice and snow melting. So just being with this for a while, this will carry through the rest of the talk, but just being with this, that this is inherent. And again, the message that I said in the beginning, it is innate. So at any time we can call upon the wholeness, the absolute unity of these moving together, always in dynamism, never stagnant or static. Francis Weller said recently that the darkness, the yin, is the territory of gestation and imagination. Where does that sit in your life? Do you have dark spaces where you can gestate? And again, these live together, right? So nurturing is seen on the yin, more enthusiastic is on the yang side, relaxed and quiet on the yin, excited. They need each other. They require each other. Internal energy work, energetic work is on the yin, more external is on the yang. Relational and more connecting is yin, and a bit more of an active, detached sense is on the yang. The yin resources the yang. So organizers will ask me all the time, you're telling me to rest. I mean, this is actually so much in the work of Tricia Hershey, and Audre Lorde talks about this, and so many others. You're telling me to give up my being in the streets. It's not about that. From a health perspective, I mean, that amending that may come from a health perspective. How are you resourcing what you're doing? These are intimately connected. The downward seeking of the yin is connected to the upward seeking. Hence, the seed gains a lot of energy underneath the soil, but it has the yang in it. And a shout out to my dear friend and mentor, Deb Soul of Avena Botanicals, who has been talking about that with me around that. So how do these energies live within you? My dears, this is just a brief reflective point in our time. Just to take a breath. And maybe it's today. Maybe you're like, I feel more excess on the yang, little less on the yin. If you're feeling sad or depressed, you might feel much more in the yin. That's a heavier, watery place. Just where are the energies in you today? So again, this is grounded in hundreds, maybe thousands of years of observing nature, just like our other Earth cosmos-based wisdoms. And this is a powerful spiritual statement about the non-binary. Powerful. And these two, the story goes that these two are so together that, they come from something called a one. So envision like a circle, just the one without halves in it. And that one comes from something that we can't name in so many of our wisdom traditions. It's called the unchanging, the invisible, right? So the idea is that there was this invisible, this happens in science as well, in our scientific understanding of how the planets have come to be, and that forms a one. And in Taoism, that forms two. These are energies, not characteristics. And when we say sacred feminine and sacred masculine, it's not tied to gender or sex. These are energies that we all have. So right now, I was talking about the social and political inflammation. We are in a cycle where the young has become hyper young, wounded young. And so that's what I mean by we're in a revolution, a yin revolution. So how can that be supportive? How can we communicate with that part of us? And how can we think about the hyper young and what we need to let go? So I'm going to move us to this slide and hang here for a minute. Don't feel like you have to get lost in all of it, but I wanted to share, and also I've been asked to by my Chinese medical guides and Qigong teachers to share the Taoist philosophy briefly, right? So the yin yang is here in the middle, but where it comes from in this cosmology is this great unity. And ahead of that is something, the Wuji, which is so hard to comprehend often as humans. It is that big amorphous, that big invisible space, the negative space, the dark space, whatever we want to call it. Why I'm smiling so big about that, I don't know. I'll sit with that, but it's coming up for me quite a bit. And this cosmology came about actually during a period of warring states between, I think it was 475 and 221 BC. And that is when there was this revitalization, almost like mushrooms coming up out of mycelium, of different forms of thought. The Buddhist thought came, Taoism came, early aspects of Zen. These were emerging during this time. And looking at nature is where Lao Tzu, and I've said this before in sessions, I kind of like some of the historians say Lao Tzu wasn't a person, but a number of sages. I think that's very interesting and living in the multiples. But by looking at nature, this was the flow of spirit that amorphous into form. So the yin yang, the yin, the heavy, the cold, the water sunk and formed the earth, and the yang, the fire, the heavens was rising to form the heavens and the cosmos. And in between those are conduits. Lo and behold, humans, plants, trees, lions, turtles, our cousins. I mean, we're all there in the conduit. So what does it mean right now to be a good conduit in this flow? And I'll just lay out here and pause that our dear Kyra Jewel spoke of the earth holder bodhisattva. I wrote down and circled conduit. The earth holder bodhisattva has a special role connected to the spirit moving into form, and is such a beautiful archetype to embody and to play with and live into the shadows and darknesses with. So from there, then, I don't know if you all have been with the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, but we see that move through 5 elements and then into something called the 10,000 things at the very bottom. Those 10,000 things are all the things in creation. Could be this table, this form, my relations, a land project, what I'm doing during the day. These are the 10,000 things. And I want to talk about the denials here just briefly. There's so many ways that we deny the whole of a cosmology. So most of us tend to focus here. We're conditioned to focus on these 10,000 things. And we're struggling, feeling burned out, feeling exhausted, feeling so stretched. And we're not necessarily knowing, or maybe need more practice with, or need to queerly turn towards, how do we really move with the spirit into form? How does the form really feed our spirits and this oneness? These are inquiries, right? So we can deny the relations here amongst these of being a part of a longer and multifaceted storyline and timeline, another huge denial. We can feel like the one in the many is too process-oriented. The word that I hear a lot, woo-woo, is very painful to me because these are cosmologies that are so profound And with that, there are also other aspects of denial that include spiritual bypassing. So hanging out here with the one and the amorphous and not paying attention to what's happening here as conduits, not looking at the violences, right? So the great mystery lives with the amorphous and the one as well, and kind of moves and filters through all of this anatomy. Dr. Gray said, eagles are not a symbol of great spirit. They are great spirit. The 10,000 things are a reflection of the one behind the many and the amorphous. The podcast, The Emerald, talks about on powers great and small. It's excellent. Find it if you haven't listened to it. That great power echoes in the tiniest of things. That's a watch phrase for the yin. And that these small and invisible powers are necessary right now. And they matter. It doesn't mean we're denying the whole picture, but that matters quite a bit. So the yin here supports us in being with the mystery and receiving in the pause. And another part of the yin is beauty, actually. So beauty can take our breath away for a moment. It has us pause for a moment. It's so powerful. So how do we find rest in a cosmology like this? How do we find rest and refuge in the yin and also the fluidity of spirit into form and back again? Hence the non-binariness. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a second and share that when we think about the wounded young, that's what a lot of people want to hear about. And I just wanted to share a note from Nikayla Jefferson and Kristen also around citing the origins of totalitarianism in a piece that they did called Let the Silence Speak. The hyper young is this how authoritarian regimes administer fear and manipulate silences. Conda Mason talked about hierarchies leading to injustice, right? So it's not that we want to eliminate the young, the healthy young. What we want to do is bring that hyper young back home, socially, in our hearts, in our relations. So the House of Yin is really about pulsing into practitioners and practices that embody the yin, that are poised for these times, to support the efforts that are the warriors really helping the hyper young collapse and find its way back home. And really focusing on this joy, this pleasure of the yin to radiate out wisdom. So what I'm not going to do is show the slide very much because it's there are lots of words in it. But I just wanted you to get a sense of, before I move into just a few minutes on queerness, where you can see these without getting lost in the words. I just wanted to share yin and yang in those first two columns make up that whole. What we're in is a hyper wounded yang time, which is the third column there. So excited is healthy yang. Feverish and frantic is a whole other thing that takes us off our collective nervous system. Being external is important, externally focused, but denying internal focus is high imbalance, right? Upward seeking is part of the way a tree grows, but when it's not coming down and not allowing it to downward seek, that's an issue. Breakneck speed is often used. It's another sign of the hyper young. So where does this show up in your life, in your work? When we think about the National Guard being deployed or ICE in the States, all of the things I talked about before, that is hyper young. There's a lot of power in radiating the yin. So what's queerness in all of this? And I'll just take a few minutes here. We don't have enough time. But queerness is not just queer-bodiedness, but it's also an elemental quality of existence and allows us to get in touch with. So queerness is a word for an elemental quality of existence, a force of life that refuses and transgresses, right? And it's available for all of us, not just those of us who are queer-bodied. It's a way of rethinking our social arrangements, the way that we relate, what we deny, what we devalue, and ask for us to include that in our world. When I was talking about the beds, the stream beds, the work of Cleo Hazard, find that. It's called Underflows. Queer trans scientist does amazing work around underflows and what we deny in queer and trans ecology. I just brought in this from Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Find strength in this is my invitation. Queerness we have identified 4 medicines, and I won't go into all this, but rest and refuge, how we find in this wider, wondrous way of looking at life, expansive way, how do we find rest and refuge in that space? And then highlighting the work that Carol and others are doing to initiate and create spaces where queer-bodied people feel that as an antidote to exhaustion and oppression. Alok has said, too, that a problem with the world is that we don't have places to sit. Rest and refuge is a part of that. In tracking and tracing, Danny had talked about seeing with clear eyes. That's a part of that. So how do we accurately identify our roots and causes of suffering? And the one and the many. How do we look for that? How do we value relations that colonial ways of being punish? So I'll move to the last couple medicines that really hold us in the whole of the forest, not just a single leaf or tree. And that is queerness is transforming and composting. How do we see that we're in constant metabolic exchange? Our community organizing is transforming oppression and composting it and elevating right relation. Many of us doing work on the composting the doctrine of discovery right now and elevating an embodied responsibility to that. So I will leave us with this. There's more, but I've gone over my time. I just wanted to say I'm just so grateful to move with this and introduce the House of Yin and the power of Yin. And when we come back after a small group time, I'll offer one small chapter from the Yin. So thank you so much. Many blessings.
Wow, thank you so much, Sonali. Oh, such a rich presentation and wisdom talk that you've offered. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sonali. We're going to just transition to our quick announcements before closing with Sonali. January 25th is our next EcoDharma exploration, embodied change making with Deborah Eden Toll. And then one of Earth Sangha's Eco Sattva training is currently open. Our upcoming programs here at Braided Wisdom include our December 7th practice, Let's Practice Together with Namali Jaya Singh. And then on December 21st, we also have our Community Healing Council with Carol Kano and Dean Hoagland as well.
Just invite you to draw your attention inward, and I'm going to offer this beautiful, beautiful piece from the Tao of Movement Building, chapter 57, based on the Tao Te Ching. When a movement leader is rooted in the natural way, her actions appear opposite to conventional wisdom. She sources herself from the laws of nature, observing how life actually works when left alone. She observes patterns of polarity, day and night, hot and cold, high and low, open and closed, hard and soft. Seeing this, she steps back when she intends forward momentum. She remains quiet when she means to make her point, and she slows down when time is of the essence. As a result, tension releases, stress dissipates, poverty turns to resilience, dependency becomes dignity, isolation self-organizes into community. Doing less, watching, listening. The path appears out of a thick mist, and she gently takes the next step. Many blessings. Follow your life force. And please stay in touch with us. Much love.
Thank you, Sonali. And thank you, everyone. You're welcome to take yourself off mute to wish the group farewell. Bring your voices in.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.